Shakti is the actual creation itself, the actual power. Like the Deva has a power. The Shakti is the power that the Deva has. She was sending signs to show me that I'm not alone. That this is my vehem in my head that I'm alone.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ajay Menon, your host, and we're doing this for the first time. Actually, no, this is the second time. This is the first time with my guest, Dhanishtaa. Welcome to my show where we talk about spirituality and we talk about religion, we talk about Hinduism and everything that probably is considered a bit out of the norm. Welcome to my show, and why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm Dhanishtaa. I am an intimacy and spirituality coach. I've been trained in Neo-Tantra and also breathwork and NLP and Gestalt and psychology. And I've studied all of this to come to, a space of really understanding what Hinduism and what our ancients were really talking about. I wouldn't say Hinduism exactly, because Hinduism was again a word that we found very recently under the British and Mughal control. But what our ancients were talking about, and I found it through astrology. So that's actually been a brilliant journey for me. And you can see that I have one of the Dasha Mahavidyas, Matangi, behind me. She's been a big player in my life, in my growth, in me being able to find myself. And she's one of the first things that kind of called out to me when I started my spiritual journey. So I'm really happy to be here to talk about her.
That's absolutely amazing. So if you guys have been watching my channel, I've been speaking about Lord Hanuman, Lord Shani, who are my Ishta Devtas. I've got Omi, a friend of mine on the show. He's been talking about Shiv, Lord Shiva. We've been talking about the Pandavas and the Mahabharata. So this is something that I've been meaning to do for a while now, because the topic today is Devi Shakti. And since we have this beautiful portrait here, since you already just initiated and just started this topic off, how do you define Devi Shakti to a layman? Like if someone who doesn't know anything about anything, can you define Devi Shakti for that matter? Is it like a specific term, generic term?
To me, I don't know what the generic definition would be. I can define it the way that I understand it. So the way I understand it is that there's a masculine power, right? And that is the Deva. And that is it comes from the very process of sex, right? It's quite simple like that. So just the way that the Deva is kind of supplying maybe an initiatory spark,
right?
Or he's holding the space for the Shakti, for the Devi, right? So after the sex, when the pregnancy is happening, the man is supposed to kind of hold down the fort, right? Keep everything protected, make sure that the resources are in place, everything. So he's like holding the space, right? And then the Shakti is what's in the center. The Shakti is the actual creation itself, the actual power.
Right.
So, for instance, in the story of Parvati and Ganesh, we know this, right? Ganesh is like holding the fort down,
right,
while Parvati is inside and she's in a vulnerable state, right? So the pregnancy is a vulnerable state. That's a metaphor, right? Her bath is a metaphor for pregnancy, for other moments of feminine vulnerability. And so the Shakti is very powerful because it is the power itself, right? It's not like the Deva has a power. The Shakti is the power that the Deva has.
Wow. I never thought of it in this way.
It's exactly like that. When you look at all of the gods, right? You look at Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. What are they? Brahma is the creator.
Yeah.
What is he creating with? He's creating with his power of Saraswati. Saraswati is the wisdom, the knowledge to be able to create, right? You can't just create random shit. It has to make sense. It has to fit with everything, right? Our ecosystem, if you look at it, every single thing in our ecosystem has a purpose. Even the most pesky bugs that we hate, like mosquitoes, have a purpose, right? Without mosquitoes, our world would go down. Without bees, our world would go down. We're finding that out right now with the extinction of bees and stuff. So we know that like there had to be that wisdom in the creation, Otherwise, the creation would just destroy itself, right? So that's what it is. So Brahma has the wisdom, the Shakti of wisdom, which is
Right.
Saraswati. Then Vishnu, he's the maintainer, right? He's the stabilizer.
Yeah.
He's the one who's going to keep everything in balance.
Yeah.
But how is he going to do that without wealth? How is he going to do that without Lakshmi is not just material wealth, but she's also intellectual wealth.
Yeah.
She's in general the wealth that we have, right? So even the wealth of nature is Lakshmi.
Absolutely.
So without that, how are things going to be stable? Right? There has to be regeneration, that process that's
the cycle keeps on repeating itself.
Exactly. And that wealth is the reason for us to be stable, right? That wealth creates stability in our life. So again, that's the Shakti. That's what he's actually harnessing is the feminine. And then with Mahesh, he's the destroyer.
Yeah.
What's going to happen after destruction? It's just going to be bombs and then nothing. Like that has to go somewhere, right? There's destruction and then there's ash, and that ash goes back into the earth, and then it becomes fertilizer for something, and then there's more life that is created from that. That's Parvati. That's the earth. Right? So every single one of these gods has their Shakti in the feminine. The actual power, they don't have any power without the feminine counterpart, the Devi. So that's what Shakti is. Shakti is essentially the actual power that we're all trying to seek out. And the Deva, we often pray to the Deva because the Deva is the one holding the fort.
Right.
So when we're praying to the Deva, we're not getting power from the Deva. We're getting power because the Deva is allowing us in to gain from the Shakti. And Shakti is always going to be something very open, very vulnerable. She is in a state of, I just want to give, like a mother, right? A mother's not going to care about whether you've gone and done some crime and come back. She just wants to make sure you are fed. She wants to make sure you're sleeping well, right? She's just that compassionate. She's just that giving. So therefore, she needs to be protected by something else. The Deva is protecting, like making sure that not every Tom, Dick, and Harry is getting in and getting the Shakti. But Shakti is, once you reach there, she will just keep giving.
Lovely. I mean, this is an aspect that it just blows your mind because it's right there, but you never think about it. Because we are so conditioned to think in a way. Simple example, like how you mentioned Mahalakshmi, you associate Mahalakshmi Devi with wealth. Simple, like okay, do a puja and you'll get money. Diwali, Mahalakshmi. But there's so much more. I mean, and we're just beginning to scratch the surface.
Yeah.
Probably through the internet and with a lot of people now sharing what they know. I mean, there's no coincidence that we're living in this time where there is a regeneration of Sanatana Dharma, where people are talking about it, where we're relearning, stuff
Absolutely.
which missed a lot of generations for a lot of different reasons, and we are in a position of privilege to understand what our ancients meant and what all they left behind, the wealth that they left behind for future generations. We are now only getting the benefits in this stage. So I want to ask you this. So since you mentioned Parvati, I was in Himachal and you've been to Himachal as well. I mean, you've lived there for during the pandemic and stuff like that. I just recently went, and this is without any bias, okay? When I was at Himachal, I only saw Devi temples. I saw the local Himachali villages, the small tiny hamlets I went to. They were worshipping the Devi over there. So the predominant deity is a Devi in every village. And all these things, the mountains, the breeze, nature, the water, in my opinion, I felt a very, very strong feminine energy. Always.
Yeah.
It, like there were many a time where I was like, I can't do it. Something pushed me. Like, it was a very, as you rightly said, like a mother's hug, like, ki theek hai, ho jayega, and that kind of a thing. And that kept me on. That is something I've never experienced anywhere else. Like, the mountains gave me that. I came back and I don't feel that here anymore. What do you feel? Like, you lived in Himachal. Do you really think, like, am I going nuts, or is there any reason to my logic or whatever?
No, you're not going nuts at all. That's absolutely true. Like, all of nature, when we go into the way that I look at the world and the way that Gestalt has taught me to look at the world is that there is a lot of in everything there is masculine and feminine, right? In every single thing.
Yeah.
So whether you're looking at a tree, when you look at a tree, the bark could be the masculine and the leaves could be the feminine, the flowers could be the feminine, the fruit could be the masculine. You can decide, like, there is it's pretty much arbitrary after a
Yeah.
point. But when we're really like, if we ignore the arbitrariness, okay, because on a logical level, yes, it is arbitrary. There is nothing that is actually making something masculine or feminine. But when you look at the energy, right, and the energy is really something that you feel, you experience. It's not something you can make sense of, and you can't make someone else understand that.
Right.
So it's an experience. So if you've experienced it, you'll understand. If you don't, then you can consider this arbitrary. But this is about, like, when we're closer to the earth, when we're closer to the mountains, the ocean, the rivers, wherever we are closer to nature, we're getting closer to, like, what I earlier talked about as Shakti, because that is our power, right? Like, we don't realize as much that our primal nature, our animalistic nature,
Yep.
then the version of us that would have been living out there in the mountains or near the ocean or wherever nature is, in the forest, that version of us is really powerful. So when we are going there, when we're putting ourselves in those spaces, when we are reconnecting with the aspect of our animalistic self, which is also just the part of us that's able to walk long miles, right? Which
Yeah.
we don't do in cities.
Which you don't
We walk long miles there.
walk barefoot
We
on
breathe
grass.
deeply over there.
Yeah,
Right? We
yeah.
walk barefoot. We feel like nature's with us. Like,
Yeah.
everything's clean. We can be free, right? We can wear less clothes. We can be barefoot, whatever. We just, like, we're going closer to our animal self, our primal self, and nature, because nature is creating a space for us there. In the city, we don't have that kind of space. So we're accessing, like, on a psychological level, we're accessing a lot of that power there, right? Because our primal self is ultimately the one that has power.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we get brute strength, brute power from our primal self. The fact that we can run long miles.
Yeah.
How strong do you feel after the gym?
100%.
Right? You
100%.
feel good when you've lifted a
Yeah.
lot of weight, when you've run a long distance,
Yeah.
right? You feel powerful. That's because you're channeling your primal self. You feel powerful after sex because that's, again, a time when you've channeled your primal self. So you're much closer, yeah, to your nature and to nature itself, to your nature, and therefore to nature.
Right.
And that process is happening in synchrony, right? So when you're going there, you're getting closer to your nature. But also, when you get closer to your nature, like when you go to the gym in the city, like when you have sex in the city, you're getting closer to nature too. So it's both ways, that you're getting closer to Shakti in both ways, and I think that gives us a lot of power. It's quite liberating. We don't always have to go escape somewhere. But yeah, obviously, when we go to Devabhumi, like Himachal especially, that's Devabhumi, right? That's where the gods lived. That's where all these stories are born from.
Yeah.
That's where, again, like you said, everyone there worships the Devi, and you can really sense it in their behavior.
Yeah.
You can feel in their behavior that the way that they look at you. As a woman, I'm very highly aware of how people are looking at me, right? And I'm like, there's a radar system constantly of, like, is there a threat in my environment? I can tell just from how they look at me, just from one glance.
Yeah.
I don't feel any of that there. So again, there I feel closer to my primal nature, because I no longer have to be so hyper aware in my cognitive, recent brain.
Right.
This is the human part of the brain. The lower part of the brain is the primal brain.
Primal brain, yeah.
So when I don't have to be super active over here and super, threat aware, then I can rest more in my primal brain, right? And for me, that, like, changed the game completely. Just the ability to do that, the fact that it was possible for me to be somewhere in my country and feel that safe, that was a game changer. That's why I stayed there for the whole year.
More than a year, I think you were there for almost.
I was there for a year.
A year continuously.
Yeah.
And then bits and pieces.
Many bits and pieces here and there,
yeah. In fact, I went to this beautiful place in Tirthan Valley where they were playing Holi with the gods. So gods and goddesses. And it was just brilliant. I mean, something very raw about it. And yahan pe in cities, you have a lot of commercialization, when it comes to pujas, when it comes to activities. But over there, it's just, I think those are passed on, generation after generation. It's still the same probably 200, 300 years ago, still very untouched.
Yeah.
And what I really felt is that, of course, when you come out of Himachal, like when you come back, you really feel that you've been at like a maternal place. Like, when you go to your nani or dadi and they feed you with a lot of food, and you're like, you're like full to your stomach,
Yeah.
and you feel that you're like, oh, yeah, I wish I was stayed for, a much longer time. But when you come back out of it, you're grateful that you spent that time. That is what I felt at Himachal. That is like the most amazing part. And whatever people say about the mountains, it's all true. I've never been a mountain person, always a beach person, like a river person or a water body person. This time, the Himachal thing changed me. And I was reading the book about Devi Shakti as well. So, I could relate to a lot of things. And in this podcast, we're just touching on a very basic understanding of Devi Shakti. I mean, we're not going to go into the detail of each and every aspect.
Yeah, we
but
can't.
I think this experience of Himachal, if you want to go, just go to any mountain and meditate. Trust me, you'll feel the same way.
It's a life-changing experience. Yeah, genuinely. Even I went there before I had any real connection to spirituality. In fact, I formed my connection to spirituality in my time over there in 2020. And I mean, I can't even begin to describe how fantastic it was. And Devi, like one thing I found about Devi just before we close is that she's very gentle, she's very compassionate, she's very loving. But it doesn't always seem like that. Like there were many times when I needed company, I needed love, I needed support, I needed just to not feel so lonely because I was in isolation over there. I didn't have anyone that I knew. And we weren't allowed to go out either.
Yeah.
There was
COVID,
lockdown over there.
COVID, yeah.
So it was hard for me. But then I'm finding that there's these massive spiders walking into my room every day. There's a huge snake that walked right by my face, like
Wow.
1 foot from my face. I had these kinds of experiences, and I'm just there, like, why would the universe do this to me? And then over time, it's taken me a long time to accept the answer. I think I got it instantly, but I couldn't accept it. But over time, I realized that, like, those are also creatures of God, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the snake especially. We're
Yeah.
speaking of Ashlesha Nakshatra, and like, there's a
Right.
whole story over there that I might tell some other time if we talk about astrology. But the snake, the spiders, everything, like it just all came together once I was back here, and I was like not in that space anymore, and I could make sense of things more. That she was like sending signs, she was sending signs to show me that I'm not alone, that this is my vehem in my head, that I'm alone, and that I'm going to be lonely, and that nothing's going to work out, and whatever doom and gloom that I was thinking about then. It's strange. The way she reaches out to you, the way she communicates is really strange. But she operates from a place of faith. Just like the faith that your mom has in you. That like, I love you and you're a good person no matter what you've done wrong. And it's the same with her, that she has that faith in you, and you need to like be able to give that faith back to her in order to really see her. She's not as visible and as overtly powerful. Like, she's very powerful, but she's not going to be as big, like as big of a presence in your life, unless you're praying to a specific goddess like Chamunda, like Chinnamasta. These are the kinds of goddesses that are very strong. They have a really strong presence, Kali. They have very strong presence in life. But most goddesses are very gentle. And so you need to like have faith and be able to just be quiet to listen to what nature, what the universe is telling you, to be able to understand. When I've done sadhanas for Ganesh, I've done sadhanas for Shiva. These are like, I feel in the 41-day sadhana that I'm doing, there's a very, like a bang kind of change that's happening. In the Devi sadhanas, it's very soft, very slow, very comfortable. It's still big, but it's much more subtle. And another thing about Devi is that she wants you to do Like, she will give you messages and you need to do those things.
Hmm.
If you do those things, you make progress, you get closer to her. If you don't do those things, you just stay where you are. She's not as punishing.
Yeah.
So it won't push you as much to do something, to make the change that you need to make. A Shiva or a Ganesh sadhana, that will push you
Right.
to make the change, because you'll get punished if you don't do the right thing.
Correct.
So again, it's a very self-responsible path.
True. Like a mother, as you rightly said, like you can commit a crime and come back home, but your mom will still love you. She'll give you a couple of slaps, but she'll still love you because you're her child.
Yeah.
And I think that is what Devi Shakti is all about. And I think this is a perfect time to bring this conversation to a close, because we've just scratched the surface, guys. This is just the beginning. And Devi Shakti in itself, or the whole Devta Devi Sanatan Dharma itself is just endless. It's vast, and we can't possibly do everything in one sitting. But yeah, I'm happy that you could come down and we could do this together and start off this topic. And if you feel you want to know about something very specific, leave a comment below, and hopefully we'll cover that topic also. We'll be talking about a lot of different things. You mentioned astrology. That's something I also want to do with you. Different aspects of Vedic astrology and Hinduism in general. Those are some of the topics that Dhanishtaa will be bringing onto this podcast table. That's it for this episode. If you like this kind of content, do consider subscribing to the channel and supporting it. It's a small thing for you hitting that subscribe button, but for me, it's a huge thing. It really helps the YouTube algorithm. If you like the video, it reaches out to a wider audience. So if you can do a bit of all of that, it helps. I'm going to be leaving Dhanishta's social media links in the description box. So do follow her channel and do follow her on her social media handles as well.
Yeah, please join me on my communities. We have 2 communities, one for men, one for women, where if you want to come in, talk more about spirituality, about intimacy, relationships, money, whatever it is that you're working with right now, that you want to grow with, we have a community that will support you with that growth. So we're going to leave the links to that below.
Yeah.
The women's one is Yoni Union, the men's is Greater Man. Please come, join the one that you're more attracted to, and really create that change, because all of what we talk about, it's all about actually bringing the change into life. You can talk about Devi Shakti and Deva Shakti forever, but when you don't do the sadhana, the belief becomes useless.
Yeah.
You can believe and you can have faith and you can worship all your life, but it's the actual doing that makes the change. And that's what all of these gods say.
Beautiful. And I think that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Until next time, that's Dhanishtaa. I'm Ajay Menon. See you next time, guys. Good night.